Very good indeed. We have got to the end of the second day of questioning, and final day of questioning of the undercover police officer HN118, who used the cover name Simon Wellings to infiltrate globalized resistance and put himself in a position to report on Dissent Network. I'm joined with Ben from the Dissent Network and from Noel Douglas from Globalized Resistance. Yeah, got there in the end. There was a lot of ground covered at the end. We got the kind of we got a whole bunch of a bit of a mixed bag of further questions. We finally got to the question being asked, which a lot of us I know have been waiting for all day, about the questions about his knowledge of the NPORU. We were finally shown the HN72's written statement, which we'd all been wanting to talk about. Basically, HN72, one of the SDS managers, says that HN118 reported to him that he had seen Mark Kennedy and Marco Jacobs, two NPORU officers, at the G8 in Germany in sexual relationships with women. HN118 claimed that no, he was asked this, and he said that would be very out of character for Marco Jacobs, but he would believe it of Mark Kennedy.
He doesn't seem to like Mark Kennedy, does he?
He doesn't. I mean, he always says the full name. Always says the full name Mark Kennedy, just referred to Marco.
You always know you're in trouble when they say your full name.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, very much. But he didn't really expand on how he knew the character of Mark Jacobs so much. I did put a Rule 10 question in asking for some clarifications about how he had such a knowledge of his character. Sadly, Don Ramble had neglected to ask it. Very frustrating.
We'll come to our frustrations about Rule 10s.
Yes.
At the end, if there's enough time.
Yes, I mean, we've got all the time. So what did you make of what we've heard over the last hour or so?
Well, let's go to some of the Dissent stuff. So he was asked about which affinity group he was in. I assume because he said he's in an affinity group. And then he lists two things which were not...
Yeah, working groups.
Which were not affinity groups. And also, the degree to which they were working groups that he was involved in wasn't really covered. And they were things like the blockades working group would have been one which I think we would have heard from people.
We'd have fucking noticed if he was in a blockading group. I'm not being fucking like, there's no need to put you around the bush. There's no fucking way he was in a blockading group. Fucking hell, no.
And what we do know is he, at least in on the papers, is he had some association with the Counterspin, the media working group, which he didn't mention for some reason.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, strange that. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, he started. He was asked what affinity groups in. He started listing things that weren't affinity groups, and then said, "But they're not affinity groups." And it's like, oh yeah, okay, so tell us the fucking
affinity
affinity
groups.
groups.
Which is funny because at the back we're all going, "Oh, they've misunderstood the question. They aren't affinity groups." What, like? He's asking what working groups he's in, and he's not really even doing that.
Yeah, it was very frustrating nonsense. And Noel, what did you make of what we heard?
Well, I mean, I think today, it was a bit more exciting yesterday, wasn't it? But I think today was very much. I mean, I have to say, I never saw him after he left Globalized, so I'm really quite surprised that the stuff he said was involved in Dissent, whatever we think about that, what level that was at. But I think today was very much about. I mean, certainly a big section of it, wasn't it, about the fact that essentially, he was just looking on the net, finding stuff and reporting that back, the stuff that's just there out on the net, the kind of the whole implication that basically he was, for post-GR, he was kind of like, reading stuff off the internet and posting it back to his desk, and I think he got, as we know, got very much skewered at the end with the MT question.
I mean, I think that's really significant.
I mean, I've just spoken with our solicitors, and it's the first time they've heard the judge essentially give an opinion.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, I mean, basically what happened was that at the very end, after the further questions had been completed, John Mitting said, "There's one further question for you from me." He asked if HN118 had listened to the evidence of Noel Douglas, Guy Taylor, and MT. He said that he hadn't. He said, "Well, of course I have," and he said that nothing that they have said leads me to disbelieve them in their evidence. I will give you this one last opportunity on the fake bomb vest stunt. Are you sure that it was MT? And he said, take your time, and he didn't take any time. He said, "Oh, I'm sure." It's very clear that John Mitting believes you, doesn't believe him. He never says that. I mean, I would say that's a sign really of how overwhelming the evidence is. I mean,
and also MT's, you know, I don't know if it didn't go out. Did it go out?
Yes, it's all out. It's all out.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it was quite. I mean, we know MT obviously, and we know he wouldn't do anything like that. But I think his evidence was so kind of certainly for the judge, you know, so erudite and intellectual, and you know, completely the opposite of someone that would kind of come up with that.
I think also, I think the other thing was that, I mean, and he did mention it. He said that you have said that your reports were written by other people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you 100% sure? And I think it's the fact that MT didn't stand by his reports.
You'll get out of jail card.
Yeah.
I didn't write that. But he doesn't. He's dug himself into a hole. He's not going to back down and say he was wrong. And I think MT has some indisputable. Is accused of having visited Iraq or something, which is like, oh, well, that's something you can actually demonstrate whether it's true or not.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, the obvious falsehoods in HN118's evidence on that person. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty open and shut, really. I mean, I think, you know, from Mitting's point of view, I mean, the fact that he felt confident enough to say that in a public setting, what his opinion on it was, speaks volumes. Speaks volumes.
And I think also there was, you know, a number of times
Closer.
where because I think he was trying to sort of present himself. I mean, this was maybe where the criticism of Mark Kennedy comes in as the kind of much more serious, you know, I wouldn't get involved in the sexual relationship. That wouldn't be something that I've done. But then there's all these little bits where, you know, again, the mask comes off, not in terms of him having sexual relations, but, you know, with Virginia and getting her passport details, you know. So it's like he's, you know, he makes all these little slips, didn't he, all the way through. There was an earlier one where he was saying about, if I'm being honest.
Yes.
And then he realizes that he shouldn't say that.
No,
do you know what I mean? And like, and we've talked about how he's got these little phrases all the time. He keeps, you know, if that makes sense, as if it actually what he's saying actually he is sort of kind of lying or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you know, the thing of Virginia and going through her passport, and you know, it's just really again intrusive.
One of them home, right?
Yeah, you know, yeah.
He says he didn't.
Yeah.
But like,
yeah, blatantly he did.
Yeah, well, that we know who that is as well, because that's kind of someone, and we think that's actually what he did. That's how he got that information. Yeah. So there's that whole side of it, isn't it? You know. But yeah, I think he's been quite significantly skewered over these 2 days, really. You know.
And one of the areas that got explored in the questioning was his reporting on Muslim groups, and it was put to him essentially because, I mean, it's that some of his reporting refers to the so-called occupied territories. You know, very dismissive about Palestine, you know, but yeah, the presence of Muslims at meetings, which, you know, meeting of 30 people, 2 of whom were Muslim men, you know, very pointedly. He claimed that he didn't have any biases at all. I mean, I think that's, I mean, it's interesting in terms of like we're going to come back a lot when we get to Robert Hastings, of course, who infiltrated the International Solidarity Movement.
With the MT being an Arab man, you know, there's obviously that sense that he, you know, even though he's trying to disown it, you know, his reporting is really quite racist and kind of, you know, we mentioned yesterday when he talks about some of the descriptions he makes of people, just really horrible way of reporting on people as well. They're really dehumanized and kind of objectifying people and being really quite horrible, which again is very different from how we can obviously see him. You know, he's presenting himself as a very sort of, you know, nice suit and kind of you know, like very sort of a respectable married man and all this sort of stuff, you know. I mean, so yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of, that contrast is quite strong.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I would say, I mean, for those of you who haven't been following the audio of the questioning, I totally understand. I mean, he is an incredibly boring speaker. I mean, when he's presented with a question, he kind of reframes the question, talks around it before going into any sort of detail. Really irritating to follow.
There was always a sense that you were getting something because he was answering, and then you would think he hasn't actually given anything.
Very noticeable for someone who was trying to write in, like, who was trying to like condense down what's being said, because you write the kind of the detail of what the question's about, and then you're waiting for the content, and it's like, yeah, it's not coming. It's just not coming. And then he finishes speaking, and like, this isn't a complete sentence. I can't put this out. Very frustrating person to report on what he's actually saying, because somewhat like many of the others, I mean, I'm always think of Bob Lambert in these. You know, he said as little as possible in as many words as possible.
Can we go back to the Kennedy stuff? This hatred of Kennedy expressed itself in him saying that he avoided Kennedy because Kennedy was too flash. He had all the nice gear, you know, had the right new sleeping bag and all the posh stuff, and that was like risky and stupid, and so I kept away. Well, you didn't keep so far away that you weren't aware that he had a new sleeping bag and posh equipment and the right label or whatever. You were pretty damn close to see that, I reckon, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I would
you were
say
paying a lot of attention to a man that you were trying to keep away from.
Yeah, because I had lots of interactions with Kennedy over the years. I mean, I knew that he was called Flash. I knew he had like nice clothes often, but I didn't know. Yeah, of course they do. Yeah, but I mean, I had no idea the brand of his fucking sleeping bag. I mean, like, why would I? Do you know what I mean? Like, it just seems a ridiculous detail to know.
Given that his cover employment was as a climber,
high rope work,
you would have the kit, right? You would
have I mean,
nice kit. It's not a
yeah. I mean, actually, the high rope work stuff. I mean, like, if you don't have the best kit, then you're in danger of death. So, kind of a key element.
So there was a whole element which was fascinating to watch, and I thought it was going to get really exciting. So before the break for the R10s, he speaks about Mark Kennedy having been with a woman, the same woman, and he's asked to write down the name, and he writes down the name, and we're not to know what it is.
But we all think it's Lisa, which is not her real name. But that's obviously not the name he was written down. But Lisa, the woman who was in a relationship with Mark Kennedy for many years, and at the time, yeah,
that's what we expected. Anyway, during the breaks, there's some discussions, and after the break, it's revealed who the name is, because the person whose name it is has said it'll be fine to say it's my name. Is it Lisa? No,
it's Kate.
It's Kate, and she's like, that wasn't my name. That's not the name anyone knows me by.
No one. I mean, just for the record, nobody ever called Kate back in the day.
I mean,
I'm still not quite used to calling her Kate now, really, but I do, because everybody does now.
So there was a very, very long line of questioning about where did you hear that name? Where did you get that name from? Didn't really end somewhere that I expected, like the big reveal.
There was no. I mean, he said he couldn't remember. He wasn't sure. He couldn't even remember if it was from an activist or from the SDS.
Yeah. So Ramble never told him that, like, you've just exposed something that you actually didn't get that from the time. You got that subsequently from the media reporting. Like, I think I don't know. It's like 2014 or something that she comes out with stops. So yes, they let him walk away from that without revealing that they know he had his story doesn't make sense.
I'm always reminded of Donald O'Driscoll telling me they're not going to explain it to you. The inquiry is not going to provide you with a narrative. It's not telling you the story. But yeah, I mean, I think within that he revealed that essentially he not only was he lying, that he was he was using information that he'd got from the public domain to like mix in to pretend that he had like some limited knowledge. Really it undermines his evidence quite significantly. That and I think there was a couple of other ways that he did that throughout his way that he answers questions today. Referring to the only time they knew about Jim Boylan and being in a relationship was from the media on the BBC website is where he found out. And let's be clear, the BBC was late to report on that. It was in the Guardian for a while before that. The idea that a former undercover officer wasn't all over the media on this topic.
They literally moved the entire SDS offices.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Because of this. And you were unaware of that. And you're like super secret agent man who knows everything. Oh my God.
But also, he says that he knew it was because a woman had phoned the office. So he knew there was a woman involved. He wasn't sure that it was connected to Boiling, but we didn't ask any questions. I mean, again, a nonsense. I mean,
and then it was the fact that he said he was really good friends with Carlo, didn't he, as well, and claimed that again he didn't know anything about the sexual relationships he had. So he's a very
occasional drink.
Yeah, occasional drink when they were actually as activists. So yeah, he's a little snake, isn't he? Really, lots of ways.
You know what didn't come up? Beergate. Did the whole like.
I mean, it did yesterday. Yeah.
So
60 pints a month, maximum.
That's what he says.
That's what he says. 50 to 60 pints a month maximum. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this whole thing about, I mean, they also did his value for money document yesterday.
Yes.
So I mean, I think the whole expenses scandal thing and the amount he's getting paid, it didn't get fully. It didn't come back up
No,
again
no,
today.
and
did it?
we kind of tried, didn't we? When they went to his credit, the QC did try and Bramble. Is it Bramble? What's his name?
Yeah, Don Ramble.
Rumble, whatever. He did try and when he was talking about our overseas trips, because that's I think he was trying to get him on that, because it wasn't just the fact he was being paid on those trips; he was getting per diems as well. You know, what I mean, on top of being paid. You know, what I mean, so he was doing, and also this whole thing where he tries to do the sob story of, you know, how he didn't have a life. I mean, certainly, I'm sure it must be the same with when he was in the Descent era. But Globalised, we weren't meeting that much. You know what I mean? It wasn't like he had to be out every night with us. I mean, he must have been doing nothing loads of the time.
I mean, I think this is an unexplored area of the inquiry generally, but I think what we're starting to see, and we saw it a lot in the evidence of Peter Francis, is that these undercover officers did have an undercover persona with people who were not activists. That they actually made friends in their undercover persona and lived a life as like kind of the civvy part of their undercover deployment. And I mean, it's not entirely clear whether HN118 did that, because the inquiry doesn't appear to want to explore any of that. But certainly Peter Francis talks about having a whole set of friends that he did martial arts with, went on holiday with, he used to go drinking with, he used to go to nightclubs with. When he did his withdrawal, he went on holiday with them for like a number of weeks in Spain.
And did acid.
Yeah, did acid and yeah. I mean, there is this whole other layer of the undercover deployment where people are being deceived, people's lives are being messed with, but they're not activists. There's nothing political going on.
Someone did mention it, because
When he was crying, he talks about having friends.
Yeah, and he was talking about how I'm lying to the news agent, I'm lying to the, you know what I mean? It's what? You know, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
We all like to news agents.
No, I'm having a party. That's why I'm buying so many beers. Yeah. You know, I mean, I think as well, one of the things about the expenses, though, is that we've heard from numerous undercover officers that because it was so expensive in the deployment, that there was a cap on the expenses, that they all just had the maximum expenses accounts. It was all maxed out.
Yeah.
So they didn't really have to justify it too much. And I think this is the nature of the creative rent books and all this kind of stuff, because it was just to get it up to the number.
This really conflicts with the idea that Welling said he had to like dress down and be scruffy and not have a new sleeping bag because otherwise he would stand out. You can't say that these deployments are super expensive to keep up with all these activists' drinking habits or you know, lavish expenditure, and then dress in rags and complain about Mark Kennedy having nice kit.
Yeah. I feel there's a lot of HN118's deployment that wasn't explored at all. I think a lot of it kind of around those things, around like what he was doing with a lot of his time, because as you said, with Globalised Resistance, it was quite rare. You know, it was only once a week. He was kind of and weekends.
I mean, you know, as we all know, that period was super busy politically, wasn't it? And yeah, there might have been a demo maybe, but you know, like in terms of the actual organizing meetings that he would have been, you know, we wouldn't have had a steering committee every week, maybe once a month. I mean, I don't, you know what I mean? I can't, again, what will you be doing like on a day-to-day basis? I mean, okay, maybe coming down and volunteering in the office maybe, and that's where he sees he's busy, you know what I mean? I don't know, it's just, you know.
And this is where the latter third of his deployment comes in, where literally nobody knows him because he's sitting in a cafe on his or whatever, or his flat bedsit duff, playing on his laptop, and he's not. It's the grey man. He's not someone who's actually in a group. He's reporting on them because he's trawling it off of indie media, and obviously he's got no friends at that point because he's not actually infiltrating anything. It's really interesting to see, you know, is he claiming for the 100 pints a month? Is he drinking 100 pints a month then? Because who's he drinking it with? What is the face-to-face time that he's getting? What I was really hoping was going to come up during this, and in the last 15 minutes, it looked like it wasn't going to happen. And then finally in the R10s, it was kind of, it got addressed, is this thing about, we know he's sucking information off the internet. Is he putting stuff on the internet? When finally the question got asked, he did like basically just repeat what we already had in evidence, that he responded on forums and mailing groups. The context of that didn't really get asked. It wasn't established whether management knew that he was putting in, taking part in public discourse, political discourse, and what one assumes is organising on these forums. And he wouldn't say, he said he couldn't remember what alias he used, what handle he used on the forums, which is a big disappointment. We basically didn't get anything beyond what we already knew in the evidence there. And he was I think quite critical by the amount of time he spent online, and he's talking about the importance of organizing online and cyber. Who uses that term anymore? Anyway,
cyberspace, cyberspace, very cringe.
And voice over IP, and but the inquiry doesn't really see the importance, and yet it is in the terms of reference. So the inquiry is very keen to point out when something's not in the terms of reference and stop it being talked about. But this is in the terms of reference, and they're not getting there. And the last big hope is Rob Harrison's questioning, because he is known to have done a lot of online stuff.
Boogie Boy.
So tune in for that one, definitely.
So tomorrow we will be hearing from Maya, who was a woman who was deceived into a long-term intimate relationship by Rob Harrison. Then on Thursday, we'll be hearing from Asif Chowdhury, who was someone who was involved in the international solidarity movement, followed by, we will have Chris Nyam, who was meant to give evidence last Tuesday. He'll be coming in on Thursday afternoon.
Trial's finished today?
Yeah, his trial is finished.
No verdict?
No verdict yet. Yeah.
Well, it might be good.
Maybe good, maybe bad, yeah. Yeah, and then next week we have got 3 or 4 days of evidence of Robert Harrison.
We've had a few little tasters of that come up, actually. I can't remember in what context, but some of his posts have been discussed in this week.
Yes, they have.
Because there is some overlap there. So we heard something about Wellings' involvement in encouraging someone to go to the SAC Parliament event.
Yeah, he invited Patrick McCurdy to come to SAC Parliament. I mean, just to say, like SAC Parliament was, a very strange day for me. I was with a group. I went down with a group as I wanted at the time, wearing a lot of one colour.
White.
Strangely not white. No, not that either. Anyway, the point was that nearly everybody who was with me, who was part of the moments of the flashpoints, should we say, got arrested. I was followed by a forward intelligence team to the pub which I attended with Marco and met up with a bunch of other activists who had escaped the cordon. I introduced Marco to a bunch of people that day. Some police officers came to arrest me for my involvement in the flashpoint. The forward intelligence team prevented them from arresting me, told them that no, I wasn't to be arrested. They came and told me this and said, look, I just want you to know that we look out for you as well. I've always found that was really weird. In retrospect, of course, I was sat in the pub with Marco, introducing him to lots of other people. So I've got a whole bunch of questions about SAC Parliament, which one day will come to the fore. But, yeah. Actually, one of the other things, and one of the things he talked about was going to a dissent meeting in Nottingham, which I was also at, with Marco and a number of other people. And he said that at that meeting, somebody from Globalized Resistance came in towards the end.
I have no idea who that was. It's very interesting. I would like to know who that was. The only thing I can think of is it maybe someone was maybe quite peripheral or didn't, because one of the interesting things about his deployment after GR, like he mentioned that he claims that the founding the Clown Army stuff. Well, I know Jay and he's a Clown Army really well. From before, like from with J18, with Jay, and if I'd have seen him with them, there's no question I'd have told them, and you know what I mean. So that's he can't have been involved in these things hardly at all. It's just kind of it's building his myth, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very interesting. We were talking about. We got no idea.
His myth with who?
Yeah, I know. Well,
He's building a legend, but it's not like in his activist circles. He's building a legend within his unit.
Oh no, I know.
Yeah. I have got when it was when I was disclosed the report of that Nottingham meeting. I was like, oh yeah, I've got an image of this guy with those awful fucking combats that he used to wear and being in the room. I haven't got to remember of any details of anything that happened there, but like. It's kind of bugging me. I'm like that person who came at the end. I've got.
That's the thing is that it was interesting that he did encouraged the guy who was doing the PhD to come out on a demo, because that's the thing about all the forum idea. Is he's not an intellectual, right? He never would say anything in GR. I mean, that's what I completely remember of him. And obviously in hindsight, once you know he's a copy, it makes sense. But, I never remember making any political interventions. So the idea that he'd be on forums, I mean, I'm not saying he couldn't be doing that, but it seems to me he's very, it's not like he's the kind of person that's trying to make sort of ideological interventions or something like that. But I mean, I could be wrong, obviously. But, again, I think it's just that, again, it's just justifying his deployment.
I mean, it is quite interesting to see the interviews, the text of the interviews that he did with Patrick McGurdy for the
Completely mental,
yeah.
And they could have gone that further, I think, because when you read the actual interview, it's very much like because he's now in dissent. He's got to be like, oh, that was all a bit too fluffy, and now we're getting involved in the real. You know what I mean? It's all kind of like with that again, the thing of like trying to make out he's some sort of he's become like a hardcore radical or whatever. Yeah.
He was asked about the pinnacle of his direct action.
Oh yes,
which is sitting in the road. Which I believe happened in 2002.
Yeah.
For
that Selfridges protest. I mean, I remember that like photographic memory. That's why I put it in. I mean, I wouldn't have said it in the inquiry if I had not. And I remember, and that was, I'd say, like that was him at his most. I mean, he may have done it on other things. I don't know. He may have done it, I don't know, with dissent or whatever. But I mean, that's to me like when he was really like, and that was like really. I remember like clear as day. Jumping up and trying to stop the police cameraman from filming, and all this sort of stuff. And again, it wasn't. Like a lot of these things, it was just a small protest, really. And we hadn't got into Selfridges. We probably went better to do a flash mob and get in there without telling anyone. We tried to just go through the door, and of course, it just blocked it. And it wasn't worth the kind of. But he was really aggro. He was really going for it.
Shame there's no video of that, because we have seen a few of these kind of what you're describing as this kind of macho, Larry, like come on then. And we've seen that with Boiling. We've seen it. Well, we haven't seen it yet. Mark Kennedy is a good example. I mean, that's also not a very grey man behavior, is it? Like,
no. I'm aware we're getting on for a while now on this. It's always frustrating. There's always a lot of questions. Whenever we get the end of an undercover cop, it never feels exhaustive.
2 days.
Very short period of time. I know there was a lot of Rule 10 questions that weren't asked that people submitted. He's not going to get called back. It's almost certain he's not going to get called back. Is there anything that really lingers that you're like, really should have been asked about that?
Not especially. I mean, as I say, I think he was quite comprehensively kind of done over in the best way. I mean, I think especially on day one, so I think it's kind of, and I think the whole thing with MT as well. I think so. Yeah. No, I'm I think, and I think our solicitors as well. I think everyone's as happy as you could be in this sort of situation. So yeah.
Ben, what do you reckon?
First day was great. I do regret that we didn't, and this isn't our choice, we would have no agency in this, but I do regret we didn't keep our powder dry with that total and utter demolition of those claims about the successes of his operation and the access his operation had. It would have been nice to let him like run out with that a little bit and like defend without knowing that we had the ammunition to completely demolish it for a little bit. That would have been nice.
I mean, I must say, I'm very frustrated about the lack of explanation of his involvement in the summit protests outside of the UK, outside of England and Wales, because I'm obviously that includes Scotland. I mean, he wasn't around, like we say a lot of the time, but at these summits and at these camps, you're camping together for a week at a time. It's very intense. There's a lot of meetings going along. There's a lot of activity going on outside of going on actions or whatever. A lot of practical stuff that people are doing. He inferred times where he was helping out with some kitchen or doing this or doing that and the other. I'd really like to see an explanation
he also said
of
that about veggies.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I mean,
he said that about everything.
But it is true. I mean, the fact of the matter is that if you were at one of those camps, then like you would have to be an absolute prick not to get involved in some of the practical activities that are a really key part of making these things work. And the fact that wasn't explored in any way, and it's because it's outside the terms of reference. Really, I think like hides a good third of what he was doing. Really.
Yeah. Can we play guess what he was like? almost arrested for, not quite arrested for, in overseas. Because would this have been the occasion that Mark Kennedy got arrested for setting light to a wheelie bin? Like, yeah, I mean, what
They aren't they? So I mean, they probably want to get up some sauce.
or it might, yeah, it could have been a completely non-activist related arrest in a foreign country.
Certainly. I mean, there were numerous occasions that I remember being in preventative, like mass detention. Essentially,
Yeah.
used to be quite common on the continent during a lot of these things. I remember, being on a demonstration and just surrounded by thousands of police and held in place.
I remember Bonn, Germany, like 40 people
Oh,
shoved
God.
into a coach, a hired coach, to be arrested.
God, yeah, in Copenhagen, we got stuffed in the old Carlsberg brewery in cages. I mean that would have been outside of his thing. But before we get into lots of anecdotes about yeah. Thanks for joining us. It's been an interesting couple of days with HN118, cover name Simon Wellings. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No. Still more to happen.
Please join us again tomorrow. We'll be hearing from Maya. There will be some very extensive restriction orders in place for that. I'm not sure it will be broadcast in any sense at all. Maybe audio only, maybe with a modulator on the voice. I'm not entirely sure. I will be reporting what I'm allowed to report. Obviously, this is for Maya's privacy, which is totally understandable. Whatever happens, I will cover it as best I can. Please join us. Please like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Makes a huge difference to how visible this stuff is. And if you'd like to support this work, you can buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/Tom B. Fowler. It would make a big difference. Thanks.